welcome back to Saguaro Valley. This is episode 18, and in today's episode, I'm going to be building this drive-in movie theater. It's inspired by the drive-in movie theater that's here in Glendale. I think it's called, obviously, the Glendale Drive-In Movie Theater or something like that, but yeah, it's essentially a little bit of a shadier part of town. It's definitely not a place you want to be alone at during the night, walking down the street or whatever, because there's a lot of abandoned buildings or just empty lots and stuff like that, and rundown industry and scrap yards. So it's definitely a little bit shady, especially at night. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this episode. So to start us off here, I'm going to be basically trying to figure out the main size and shape of this lot. And to do that, I'm using these airport taxiways because I could have just filled it up with some sort of decal or prop that's basically a huge cement tile, but I don't want to add to the prop count because this build is basically just purely decorative. It's non-functional. It's not actually a building or anything that these cars can actually drive in and use. So yeah, it's essentially just purely decorational. I just wanted something that looks good, and to do that I used these airport roads networks rather, because obviously networks aren't as taxing as having a crap ton of props in your city. So you can see that I originally built this further south in the city, but I realized that the terrain there was very steep. I wanted a nice flat area to build this, and I just ended up choosing this area here, which works much better. So yeah, now you see me placing down these network curves, and the purpose for these are obviously to create a sort of layout in this giant lot, and this will allow me to figure out where these actual movie theater parking lots will be, and where the cars will drive, and just the general layout and flow of traffic for this drive-in movie theater. Essentially, how these places work is that there is a huge sort of almost like a toll booth sort of entrance to these places. Obviously, you have to pay for your ticket somewhere, and you just stay in your car the entire time. So yeah, you just drive up. There's usually a huge line of cars just in the entrance, just waiting to pay for their tickets. And essentially, I'm basing this off of the Glendale movie theater, or Glendale drive-in theater that's here in, it's in Phoenix, but specifically in Glendale. I'm not sure how this place is actually laid out specifically, in terms of where the traffic flows. I've only been there a couple times, and essentially what I wanted to do here is have this central area be almost like an oddly shaped roundabout. The traffic only flows in one direction, and that's how they get to these different parking lots that have the theaters. And obviously on the right side right now, this little slip of road there, it's the main exit of the place, the only exit to this place. And yeah, it's gonna be smaller than the entrance because there's less cars exiting at once than there are entering at once for some reason, I don't know. And I'd like to take a moment to talk about my absence from YouTube for the past couple weeks, and it's mainly due to college. It's basically just college. I'm way too busy doing schoolwork and just focusing on my classes and doing adult stuff. So yeah, I apologize for the lack of videos recently, but I'm not at all quitting. The series is not over, and neither is Mexico, by the way, because I know I've promised in the past couple videos that I'm going to be focusing more on my Mexico series rather than Saguaro Valley, but a lot of you seem to miss the series more than Mexico, and honestly, so do I. It's quite fun to work on a place that's so similar, or related to your home. And yeah, as you can see here, I'm placing these giant screens, which I know they all have the same Universal Studios logo. There's not a whole lot of other alternatives on the workshop, so I just had to stick with this. And yeah, just apparently people are all watching the same movie at the same time, even though it's not at all what these drive-in theaters are like. So I downloaded this huge car prop pack from the workshop, and essentially this gives me a crap ton of cars to just work with and plop down in this drive-in theater, because obviously there's going to be a whole lot, like hundreds of cars, and this was obviously the most tedious and just annoying part of the build. Me placing down these hundreds of cars, but I tried to make the process a little bit more easy by just, like you saw me at the beginning of the clip there, I was just placing like small groups of cars together that I could just easily copy and paste throughout the build, and that's essentially how I built the rest of this area, just a bunch of copy and pasting with the Move It mod. And a technique that I like use to simulate or fake movement, because obviously these are all props and this whole place is just decorative, so there's not going to be any moving cars here, and just the spacing between cars is an important detail that you have to pay attention to, because obviously cars that are a little bit more bunched together are probably either standing still or just straight up parked, and cars that are spaced out a little bit more indicates movement. So like maybe a little faster speed will be represented by further spaced cars, and that's just a little technique that I use to create this little sort of roundabout in the middle of the drive-in theater here. And yeah, now you see me filling out these actual theater parking lots with these hundreds of different cars, and I really wanted to create variation between these different theaters, because I obviously don't want them all just to look the same. I don't want them to be all filled with just cars watching movies. I want there to be a little bit of variation, maybe movies ending. So as you can see here, the cars are just gradually leaving their parking spaces and making their way towards the exit, which is indicated by this little like middle section that's meant for cars to drive through and make their way around that little parking spot for the movie. And I ended up leaving these two parking lots alone, just to have like parking lots that maybe these cars that are entering the drive-in theater are going to. And now you can just see me working on the surrounding areas, or at least starting to. Just building up the infrastructure here, creating this bridge that connects the two sides of the freeway together, because I didn't really just want to have that main avenue just end abruptly at the top of the drive-in theater there, so building this bridge just kind of helped connect the two sides together. And yeah, now you can see me working on the surrounding area around the drive-in theater, and this is essentially just going to be a giant empty dirt patch, a dirt lot. Perhaps this is just land that the drive-in theater owns and they just didn't want to end up developing it further, or maybe they will at some point in the future if they have more business or more demand. But yeah, it's essentially just going to be a giant empty patch of dirt with very few points or patches of vegetation and weeds and stuff like that. Now you can see me building up this, or decorating this freeway, and I decided to decorate this a little bit more nicely because it's really close, or right next to part of the wealthier side of town that I haven't ended up developing yet. kind of just left it to on its own after that episode that I built this area on. But you can obviously tell that this side of town is one that the city cares a little bit more and pays more attention to and maintains a bit better than the rest of the city. So this street that is, the area across the street from the drive-in theater is kind of unique to me because I wanted to use a lot more run-down, like 70s or 60s typed buildings because obviously in the past Phoenix was, it still is a very car-centered city. Obviously you can tell that by the grid layout, and it's just a very car-centric city. And in the past, just the birth of this sort of automobile era, it's very interesting to me. I love the style of architecture. I love just the way that, I just love the style of the 70s and stuff like that. Obviously, as a city developer, you probably want to stay away from having your cities be centered around the car, because that just leads to terrible land use, land management, and huge amounts of traffic. But I don't know, as a simple style to try and replicate, it's very interesting and very I like it. So it's something that I'm going to try and do more of in the future of this series. Just have more areas dedicated to like maybe sort of the 70s style era, stuff like that, car culture, the birth of fast food and drive-in restaurants and stuff like that. So yeah, this obviously being a much older area, it's going to be much more run down, maybe have some pockets of industry next to it. At least that's how it is on in the actual Glendale area that I'm basing this off of. And there's also going to be a lot of like farms around here. Obviously the valley used to be full of farming. It's basically one of the main industries here in the valley, or at least it used to be. Lots of cotton, lots of other crops and such. So obviously with the city growing and building more infrastructure, they bought up a lot of these farmlands and just built housing developments and stuff like that on top of it. But you still see a lot of these patches of just farms that obviously are still in use, but are small remnants of what used to be here. And you could just see me putting down a bunch of these, I guess, bushes, which are meant to serve as the crops that are being grown here. I don't know what's being grown here, probably cotton or something like that, but it's not really important. I like the way that these power lines look through and just cutting through the middle of the field. I don't know how realistic that is. I don't think I've really seen much of that in real life, but I like the vibe it gives off. I don't know, I just kind of like the way that looks. And it reminds me a lot of like maybe the Midwestern United States. I'm just finishing off the build here. I'm just placing this little warehouse where maybe the equipment is stored to maintain the farm, and this parking lot that kind of connects through the same orientation as that avenue there. Maybe to serve as maybe that's where the avenue once cut through and they just ended it off because of the freeway, and they just turned that remaining section into a little parking lot for the farm or whatever. But yeah, that is now the end of the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm sorry for the extremely delayed upload schedules that I've been having recently, but yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I will see you guys in the next one.